Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's your first podcast?
Yeah, maybe last one. We'll see.
Oh, I don't think so. I think you're going to be good. But anyway, I've been a fan of your work for a long time.
Flattered.
I've told you this many times before,
Flattered. Thank
but
you.
I don't really know much about your background.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear where you came from, how you got into film,
Yeah.
and a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So I don't have that interesting of a story, to be honest. Pretty short, pretty straightforward. I grew up in Italy, and then immediately after high school, I came to the U.S. Um, my family didn't really want me to pursue this career originally. I think for any parents, it's kind of scary to just hear that your son or daughter wants to be in film. Um, but then they sent me to like a summer program, like film school in Prague, and they were like, if you really want to do this, let's like actually pretend you're doing this for real and see if you still like it and if you want to take it seriously. And I did that, and I loved it even more. Too bad for them. And some one of the teachers there recommended I would go to film school in America,
Mm.
which you know I guess it worked out. I don't know if it was the best suggestion. There's like really valid schools in Europe, Berlin, London, Italy as well. But somehow I ended up in Eurofilm Academy, which is pretty controversial little school. Some people love it, some people hate it. Um, Definitely not what I would recommend to my old self, but I did a cinematography course there. Initially, actually, I thought I was gonna go into directing. I didn't really fully understand what like the cinematographer does, and then I realized I like cameras and lighting more than anything else, and I just kind of developed into a career straight out of school. And if you go back a little bit more, something I don't like to think about too much, but I used to have a YouTube channel as well. That's when I was like 14, 15.
Yeah,
There's no trace of it left in the world anymore, thankfully, maybe. But I guess I thought that I liked YouTube and the influencer world and all that kind of stuff, entertainment. Quickly realized I'm better off staying behind the camera, and that's what I really loved. As soon as I got my first camera, I was like really fascinated by the tool, and I don't know, that kind of developed into like local jobs here and there, and um, yeah, and then into a passion eventually.
amazing. Something I find interesting, especially for someone that like pursues a creative path.
Hmm.
Like you said, your parents maybe initially didn't
Yeah,
um, find enjoyment in seeing their son maybe pursue a career that isn't safe or
yeah,
like stable. Um, how long did it take for you to kind of prove that what you were pursuing was something that was like a viable
yeah.
career path?
Oh,
And
to
are they
be,
still supportive of you like now?
oh, they're super supportive. And to be honest, like now that I'm more into the commercial world, they're even surprised that you can make money in this career. Um, I don't know. I feel like the way I presented it maybe is a little misleading. I was very supported. I guess they weren't immediately super happy about what my interests were, but as compared to like a more traditional career, but they immediately were like, okay, if you want to do this, you just got to do it properly. We don't want you to like end up hating your life and like surviving and doing things that you're not passionate about. So in a way, I was very lucky and very privileged that they literally like sponsored my education so that I could do it at the higher level. Um, so I think they were very accepting, and to be fair, like both my parents and my entire family pretty much comes from a semi-creative background. They all come from fashion. Um, so I think to an extent they get it.
Mm.
They just had a hard time understanding that somebody could live on a like gig to gig basis and
Mm.
not just have a fixed
Right.
yeah
Income.
income.
And you also mentioned that you wouldn't recommend film school to your old self again, or that specific school maybe? Like what do you mean by that? Or what benefits did you get from it?
Um, no, I think it depends. The film school was necessary for me to
Mm.
be in America because that's how I got my first visa, and then eventually, like I was here on a student visa, and then it developed into an artist visa. Now I'm applying for my green card. So from that standpoint, and just as somebody foreign to this country that has to build connections and it's starting from scratch, that's like the perfect scenario. Like you get to meet a lot of people, and some of your teachers are still active professionals. So you, some way or another, get inserted in this world pretty easily. And to be honest, also, like, I thought I had an idea of how the film industry worked, but really I didn't. So like,
Mm.
had I was I at this point in my life now, I would know that I could like look for PA gigs and like email some people and try to get a job even at a lower level,
Mm-hmm.
and then learn from there. But at the time, I didn't know enough. It would have taken me 3 times or 4 times
Right.
as long to get to where I am now,
Mm.
wasn't it, for film school. So in terms of the connections and the very visa process, that was a perfect decision. In terms of how much I learned, uh, the value is questionable.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the one thing I didn't like about my school is the way they market their programs is not necessarily attracting the most passionate and the higher level of talent. So I don't know, like, sadly, out of the maybe 30 people that were in my classes, I think like 3 or 4 are left in the industry and like actively working, which is disappointing because, of course, especially in America, film school is a big cost, and the promise is that you're gonna make connections and it's gonna evolve into a career. I was lucky that it turned out fine, anyways, but your chances are really slim if the people you're surrounded with are not really that invested. So that's the one thing I would say I wish I could have done differently. There's schools where that not better people, but people that are more passionate
Sure.
and more invested go.
Mm.
Mine was a really short program, so some people like didn't necessarily take it too seriously, and
What
they're
was it,
like,
2 year?
it's actually two separate 1 year programs.
Okay.
It was supposed to be 2 years, and
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, we don't have enough people for the second year. You can
Mm.
choose this other program.
Mm.
Turned out fine for me because I started with the directing program and then I transitioned to cinematography. But some people were applying for a 2 year documentary, and like
Oh,
the
wow.
second year they had to take, I don't know, acting or producing. I'm like,
Yeah.
how is that fine? Like,
Mm. What do you think separated you from some other people, especially as you're approaching like graduation and you
yeah.
realize that you have to start working? What did you kind of do to help prepare you for that transition period?
Um, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, to begin with, I think through YouTube and through like my interests as a teenager, I had learned a lot of the technical aspects of this earlier than some. So in school, I got a lot of opportunities to like DP this student film and gaff this other student film or direct this student film. So I definitely was able to build a reel in school, um, varied enough to get some jobs at least or show something. Um, and then after school, another weird choice. I just decided to buy a Ronin 2 out of nowhere.
Is
And
that the one that's in your room over
yeah, it's like
there?
collecting dust. And somewhere or another, I just started like operating Ronin and teching Ronin on other people's projects for way cheaper than I should have. I just didn't know my value. I didn't know
Yeah.
how much things
It's
costed.
still a good
So
experience
it's
for
great
you.
experience because I
Yeah.
saw other like real DPs at the time working,
Mm.
and I was like, oh, how that's how it's done. Like that's what I should aim to. And sometimes like I think our self growth is limited by how much we know and where we set the goal, right? Um, and when you see somebody doing something and you have a direct example of what you're supposed to do,
Mm.
then your growth like grows, is like
Interesting.
speeds
Yeah,
up
yeah, yeah.
exponentially, I think. And that's kind of what happened. Like I just saw a couple DPs working, and I was like, oh wow, I can do that and get there, and yeah, just I
Was
had an example.
yeah, were there any DPs in particular that you looked to as sort of like a mentor or took you under their wing?
um, I don't know if I ever had like a proper mentor. I definitely have some colleagues and some friends that I you know I got a lot of advice from. Um, I think two people that like gave me this example initially were Alberto Mojica, which I don't know if he remembers.
Mm-mm.
That I was like the third or fourth grip on one of his
Oh
jobs,
wow.
and I saw him lighting. I was like, oh wow, this is such an interesting approach. You know, coming from film school, you have 3 lights, and you're like,
Mm.
okay, I'll do 3-point lighting, and like,
Exactly. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and then I see this guy doing like 12 units for a simple key light, and
Mm.
then just doing some weird, like very minute things and adjustments. And I was like, oh wow, that's the level of detail I should aim to. Um, and so that was a good example. And then Charlie Owens in Art Chuck Down,
Mm.
he's doing amazing things now. But I
Oh, that's his Instagram, Chucktown.
yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen it.
We were shooting like events and like smaller things together, sometimes operating on some jobs. And then I was an electrician on some of
Mm.
his jobs. And like, yeah, that was like 5-7 years ago. And yeah, I was lucky to see what me in 5 to 10 years would be. And
Love that.
yeah, just work towards that with a
Mm.
with a precise goal in mind.
I think that's something that I maybe missed was, and not that I can't do it, but I kind of just decided that I wanted to be a DP, and I just decided that I
Yeah,
am. I did a little bit of crew work, but not to the extent of me being able to see like real DPs work on a
yeah,
consistent basis.
yeah,
And I think that sometimes I lack some technical knowledge and
hmm
like precision, like you said, because I've never really seen other DPs work.
yeah,
And I think that's a great point for people that want to be DPs is
yeah,
the importance sometimes of crewing.
yeah, totally. And I think to an extent, I mean, I wish I had crewed for longer.
Mm.
Like the 3 or 4 examples that I mentioned are like those pivotal moments, but also like they're pretty much it.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
uh, but for example, I was on a job with a really big DP at a time for me, and I was like refilling the generator for the first time. I had no idea how to do it. And I remember spilling an entire tank of gasoline on the floor in at flat iron, and just like everybody looking at me, and I was completely panicking. Um, but then I got the chance of like standing next to this guy and holding the bounce board and seeing even how he wanted me to move the bounce board, and how he was communicating to me, and how he was communicating to the crew. And I think it's less the technical things that I observed on those jobs, and more um, the attitude and the level of care and expectations and confidence that I
Mm.
observed from other people, and that I was then able to aim towards, um, like I didn't know I could talk to a gaffer that way. I didn't know I
Mm.
could talk to production a certain way and
Mm.
ask for that much. And like, hey, when they tell me they don't have the budget, maybe I should poke and poke again, and like actually make them aware of what sacrifices are being made. And like, I need to, I had an example of how to be a better communicator, if that makes sense.
That's
And I think
yeah, that's amazing.
there's, our job is relatively easy. It can get really, really hard at a really high level, but really the structure we have around us, we could delegate all the technical things
It's true.
to really,
Mm.
really professional people, and just be the judges of taste, and like making sure that we filter out the things that don't matter, and like that work towards the project in a creative way. um I think what really makes a difference between a great DP and a good DP or a bad DP is how you communicate, and how much you're able to push a project in whichever direction.
Mm. Do you find that you push every project that you work on, or are there certain projects where it might not call for you to really push the boundaries or push production?
You know, yeah, it's a tough question. There's definitely projects where I know that there's no point in pushing, and those projects I need to get better at turning down,
Mm.
or maybe I just don't know that I could push those projects as well, and get them to a point where I would be proud of them. Um, I think the answer is that we never push enough. I think there's a limited amount of projects and limited kinds of projects, and what makes a project good and a project bad is how much each of the people involved actually pushes for it to be good.
Yeah.
Like, you can, there's, I don't know, I've been doing a lot of like very traditional commercials, and I like to find the value and the excitement in those as well. sometimes you have to light a burger, and some people would say, "Oh, wow, that's a terrible job to have." I'm like, okay, one day, hopefully, I will shoot a feature,
Mm.
and I will know how to light certain things because I spent months of my life
Mm.
figuring out how to light a burger in the perfect way.
Mm.
And I think every skill set is important as long as you learn the right things from the right jobs and don't let yourself get lost um, too much in the commercial world. But I think the traditional way of thinking is like, okay, the fast food commercial is gonna be bad. You'll just do it for the money. I think we can all recall amazing fast food commercials that were really creative and where somebody was bold enough to say, you know what, I'm just gonna make this the best fast food commercial ever.
Mm.
Um, and it takes that kind of person, it takes that kind of director, it takes that kind of DP, and it takes that kind of production designer, and everybody has to push and be way too ambitious.
Right.
So I think we're never ambitious enough. I try to be, but I want to be way more ambitious.
I think that's where my struggle is right now.
Yeah.
I think in my career is, I think the past year or so, I looked at projects and kind of just like did maybe the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And like what the boards were given to me by
Mhm.
agency or director, I was like, okay, we're going to shoot this.
Yeah.
Instead of like really looking and seeing how I could improve it or make it even like 10% better.
Yeah.
And that's something I realized that I started improving on in 2024. And I think I noticed my work get a lot better. And um, just the relationship I've had with directors and
Yeah.
me wanting to push is also an indicator that maybe they aren't pushing enough either.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like it's a tough balance for me to trust in a director? Because at the end of the day, they're the gatekeepers of
Yeah.
the vision as a whole, and like questioning them enough to where you have the ability and the wiggle room to push
Mm.
and to say, hey, I think this is better. I think we're doing this wrong.
Mm.
How often do you find you're not pushing because you're actually trusting the director and thinking, hey, maybe they are seeing something I'm not seeing. Maybe I should just follow their lead
Mm.
and like execute their vision to the best of my abilities. I think that's the thing I personally struggle with. Like
Is
sometimes,
trusting?
no, I mean, sometimes I trust the director too much, or sometimes I don't trust the director enough.
Mm.
I've definitely been in situations where I thought on set that a bad decision was being made, and then in hindsight, you look back at it and like, oh, this director was right. Like this framing is better for the story, and this lighting is better. And maybe I was just getting caught up on like thinking about lighting too much, or thinking about my part of this too much. Some other times, definitely, I'm like, okay, why did I trust the director? I knew this was going to look better if we looked the other way or we didn't use this lens. So,
I think that comes with just experience of
totally.
doing it so many different times.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm still such an infant in this that I'm still learning those different moments. But I think a lot of it is maybe my lack of confidence in my own ability to come up with creative ideas and like new ideas. I think that's maybe sometimes where I lack the confidence to push. It's like, I don't know if I trust the idea that I have in my head yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think that leads to the very philosophical question of what a cinematographer actually is. If you talk to certain DPs, if you talk to Storaro, he's going to tell you that there's one director, that there's not a director of photography. There's just one director and a cinematographer at the service of the director. So is it really our job to be that creative? Maybe. Or is our job just to enable the director to be creative to the extent they need? You know what I mean?
I do.
It's
Does that mean that I guess from your personal standpoint, do you find that you receive something from a director and then you look at what is given and ask yourself, how can I make this better, and then pitch it? Or what is your process of like coming up with ways to improve an idea?
I think it really depends on the project. There's projects that are really visual, and I have a collection of interesting visual ideas that I like to mix up. And sometimes a director wants to tell this story with this particular technique, and I have in my collection of ideas, I have this other technique that I want to test out, and I think might be more interesting or more fresh, or and still maybe tell the same story.
Is that collection of ideas in your brain or like
I just,
references in?
I used to use Instagram and save everything.
Mhm.
Now I have a million saved things. So it takes me like
Yeah.
6 hours to go through every,
Yeah,
and I'm a little OCD where like I don't feel like I've done enough work until I go to like my 2016
I
saved
see.
posts,
Yeah.
you know? So that is not sustainable anymore.
Mm,
Now what I do is I have like a Milanote board with each project that I've done with all of the visual references, and sometimes I like subcategorize them per genre or per location or per, like I kind of have my own version of like a shot deck or frame
okay.
set
Interesting.
with like that's more curated to my taste or
Mm,
to individual projects. And I can just go back and say, okay, I tried this one thing last time. Let me try this other thing. Let me try to sell this to a director. So for more visual projects, I try to do that. Sometimes though, if it's a more narrative project or some tabletop stuff or some product intensive project, then I think sometimes it's better to keep it simple and not try to be like original or excessively, you know, ambitious or creative sometimes, and just try to do the assignment at the best of your abilities
right.
at the highest technical level. Some things just will work when they're simple.
Mm,
I've been doing a lot of comedy. Sometimes if you add too much to the comedy, it just ruins it. Sometimes you have to cut to a static wide shot, and
right.
that's the best punchline ever, you know? So when I trust the director, and I need to get better at discerning the directors that I should trust and the ones that I shouldn't trust. But when I trust the director, I try to add enough where I feel like I've contributed to the image and to the piece, but not too much to where I'm damaging the story.
Mm,
I'm ruining the very nature of the project and making it less successful. At the end of
mm,
the day, sometimes we're selling things. I can think that a silhouette is better for a shot, but then if it's not selling the
right.
product,
You think it's
you
like
know,
an ego thing sometimes? Like you want to do something for visual, but it's not right, but
totally.
it's more of an ego, the reason why you want to do it.
Totally. And there's an art in getting the shots for your reel
Yeah.
and also delivering and not
Yeah.
pissing anybody off. And there's projects where we should know that we can do our thing, and it's not gonna, ruin any relationship. There's projects where we need to do what we've been asked to do. And again, I think the stigma behind like certain kinds of projects should be lifted, at least for the EPs, because I
Mm,
think it is important that we learn to light bright scenes, to make a soap commercial look good, to make a burger look good, to make anything look good. Because we never know. Like, there's films that we love that are not very moody,
right.
where the lighting is not the main, the protagonist. um, there's very simple movies that are shot with no lighting and where the cinematography is so secondary,
Right.
and they're still very striking and things I hope one day I'll be able to shoot.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
You look at those as opportunities to like hone your craft and practice your technical
Yeah.
abilities and like simplistic, like fundamentals.
Yeah, and I think we have to. I think the worst thing we can do is be at home doing nothing.
Mm,
Um, Especially I'm not the kind of person that when I'm at home I'm like necessarily investing my free time in the best way.
okay.
So I like being on set and I like finding excitement behind small things
Mm,
rather than like literally waste my time, you
right.
know.
What do you find you do when you're at home?
Ah, I don't know, man.
You said when we were off this call, you said that you
Yeah.
you really need to recharge. Like
Yeah.
what is the value in that for you?
I mean, this leads to a larger conversation. I know you talk about it a lot on the podcast. Just spending time with your family, enjoying your family time and your time at home, and take back some sort of normalcy in your life. I personally travel a lot. I'm based in New York, but I think I worked in New York 4 or 5 days last year. I'm always in LA somehow. I'm always in Atlanta somehow. And I'm kind of everywhere, which I'm grateful for. And I think there's amazing value in being able to see places and meet people and everything. But sometimes I feel like you lose connection with reality.
Mm,
um, just hopping from one hotel room to the next and like seeing new people every day, it just makes you feel like a robot, like you're not actually connected to anything. So when I'm at home, I try to be really close to my wife, really close to my cat, like enjoy some free time, try to like not look at the phone, which I'm really not good at, by the
Yeah.
way, but
I don't think anyone is.
yeah. And then the other thing I do, which contradicts what I just said fully, is unfortunately like I obsess over what I just shot. I looked at dailies obsessively. I looked at my work obsessively. And I think on one hand, that makes me better at my job because when you look at a project 100 times, you start noticing things. When you look at it 7 years after, you notice different things and you go through phases and you realize things about yourself and about how you worked and about how you light and
Mhm.
shoot things. Um, on the other hand, it's just like really not healthy. Not being able to let go and like move on from a project and be in the moment. Like I think you said in a recent podcast that you live very much in the future.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
do too, but I think I live even more in the past.
Okay.
Just like beat myself up for like
Oh,
not having shot.
you find it's more negative when you live in the past, or like
Yeah, I
your
think so.
mentality?
Because like I have a hard time like focusing on my accomplishments, and
Mm.
I focus more on the things I should have done differently. And that's never gonna end because every day we learn new things. So we're gonna hate the
Mhm.
past projects even more.
It's interesting though because I think there's a positive to looking back and
Yeah,
seeing things that maybe you didn't do well that you can improve on
yeah,
in the future or whatever.
yeah,
But it can get to the point where it is detrimental.
yeah.
Do you find that you have a decent balance, or do you find that you tend to be very um, maybe negative towards the things that you don't do very well or that you messed up on or failed, for example?
I think it's getting healthier and healthier as I learn how to navigate it. Definitely used to be very negative. It definitely, every job feels like the last opportunity you'll ever get.
I feel that.
And when you're not 100% happy with something, which
Mhm.
is every time, at least for me, then it gets very negative because I'm like, oh, I had one shot and I missed it. And
Mhm.
it's never one opportunity. We'll,
Right.
we'll always get more.
Mhm.
And the reality is, the day they stop calling us, it's on us to start making things so that they call us again. Um, so yeah, I think it's all about learning how to live this in a healthy way and having a support system like your wife telling you you're not that bad and
Yeah,
like, hey,
right.
this is actually very
Exactly.
good and all those things. Like it's really helpful. But also, it's really important to maintain a certain amount of self criticism and self doubt. I think when you get too confident about your skills, that's where you stop learning. So it's a tough balance. Like, how many times do you think you look back at your work, and how much do you think you obsess over it?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. After every shoot, if I have access to the footage, I
Hmm.
stare at it for hours
Yeah.
and just like look at it. And even if I like do my own color grade or something just to see what we did that day,
Yeah.
I think I could find moments of like, oh, this is good. I'm proud of this. But
Yeah.
then I think majority of the time I do critique myself.
Yeah.
But I don't think I don't tend to necessarily look at it as a negative
Yeah.
and like I beat myself up unless it's something like maybe I really messed up on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I look at it as more as a lesson to kind of ask myself what I did in that moment and
Hmm.
what I would do next time
Yeah.
for the better.
Do you ever
But
take notes?
I do take notes
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah. I used to take a lot more notes,
Yeah.
maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like I probably should take more legitimate
Yeah.
notes. Like your Miller note, for example. Do you
Yeah.
write down things that you?
No, not really. I'm not really good at note taking. I used to
Mm,
do it, and then I realized I never go back to those notes.
Do you think it's still valuable to write them down though?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for most people it is. I know a lot of people journal, and a lot of people
Hmm.
like writing and putting their thoughts on paper.
Yeah.
I never had that. I don't know why, but it just like never happened to me. So I think I just think and ruminate. um, and in a way, I'm writing those things down in my brain, but I definitely am a little forgetful. Like sometimes I learn a lesson and like 2 years after I completely forget about it.
And you
And
do
I'm
it
like,
again.
oh, I made this mistake before. Why did I not fix it? And other times I realize that the mistakes are not really mistakes. They're just like, like we're in the era of wide lenses and deep stop. 3 years ago, we were in the era of large format and 1:4, and everything was slightly out of focus. And like, I've hated both things and thought they were mistakes. They're just phases, and different things and different approaches. And does it really matter? You know, I think sometimes, especially I mean, you've shot a feature, you've
Mm.
done more narrative work. I've done a couple narrative pieces, but like in the short form world, as long as you shoot something engaging and that you like watching, you've done the job. Like sometimes we forget that
Right.
that's our job,
Mm.
to
Yeah.
tell a story and to get people engaged.
How often do you find that you struggle with finding maybe your voice or your style and then balancing that with like the inspiration or references that you look at or like what
Mm.
is popular right now?
Yeah. Um, I think all the time.
Mm.
The kind of projects I get, um, at least recently, are often very based on like the recent trends. Like I've definitely done a lot of probe work and wide angle work
Yeah.
and like crazy transitions. And sometimes you get the job and it's all about the seamless transitions. And like the director calls you and is like, hey, can you think about like a shot that nobody's ever seen? Can you just come out with a new transition that's never been made? I'm like, okay, I mean, sure. But like, what are we doing really?
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Right there. When you get like proposed with something like that, how do you even approach that? Because I feel like sometimes the things that I maybe get bothered by sometimes with
Yeah.
directors is like these buzzwords of
Yeah.
like, oh, can you make something cool?
Yeah.
Or can you make something interesting? Like, what is, I don't know, maybe that's just me, but like, what
No,
does that mean?
it's very triggering.
Yeah.
It's because what it really means is that the director hasn't done their
Mm.
job. It's if you write a pitch or a treatment or anything and you haven't found anything interesting within the script, within the text, within the references, to the point where you have to hire somebody to make it interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's how it works.
Okay. I honestly didn't know if that was just me that was just
No,
triggered by those like buzzwords.
I think the script should inspire the transition or the
Mm.
crazy camera move. You
Mm.
shouldn't write the most boring piece on earth and like expect somebody else to make it exciting, you know.
All right.
And sometimes it is like a purely visual piece, but it has to come from the director. Like I think we're almost translators, not writers, right?
Yeah,
Like,
for
you
sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we get a piece and we translate it,
Hmm.
or we make a simple mm, prose into poetry.
Hmm.
um, hopefully,
Right.
but we're not the ones deciding the content. Content,
Hmm.
we're just
Otherwise, we would be directors.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it definitely triggers me when our job is misinterpreted. um, I think it's a good challenge when it happens. I think there's a positive way to react to that too,
And what
where
is?
like, okay, let me flex my creative muscle. Let me see. Let me be a little bit of a writer. Let me be a
Mm.
little bit of a director. Um, and the negative way would be to just like do the job exactly as you're told and
Right.
not do anything more.
Hmm.
And I don't ever want to be that, you
Mm.
know?
You set a very high standard for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be proud of myself if I did the bare minimum. And it's really hard to stay excited in this career,
Mhm.
especially in commercial, especially in short form. Um, and I think you have to find the excitement in the piece of gear or the movement or the transition or the director you're working with.
Mm.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does for
Yeah.
sure. Do you think that where you are now is where you thought you would be maybe a couple years ago?
Um, I definitely think I expected for myself to be in a much more creative and narrative and artsy place.
Okay.
I think my abilities are like surfacing and they're leading me in a specific direction where I'm doing like more technical jobs and more like studio work. Um I'm not necessarily mad about it. I think eventually what like really makes my soul happy is something different. But again, it's all practice, and I think we are both infants in this world. And I don't know. I also realize I'm not necessarily great at like deciding my path forward and like changing the direction of my career and shaping my future. So I think I thrive in taking advantage of a certain opportunity, but I'm not a good maker of opportunities for myself.
Do you find that, so in that regard, do you think
Yeah.
that you lack the ability, like, do you not market yourself? Do you just, do you kind of wait for opportunity to come your way? What do you mean by that?
I think so. I think, like when I get a job, I try to shoot it as well as I can and to make the best Instagram post I can and to push it as much as I can. But like
Yeah.
I'm not the person that like goes to every party and like can do the small talk and
Mm,
like, you know, connect and network. Like I do a little bit, but personally, like it never feels natural to me. It's hard for me to like fake certain
right.
interests or certain emotions and like really come across as genuine when
Mm.
I'm like pretending to like,
Yeah, you're
you
trying
know,
to get something out of,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
no, I
like
feel that.
I'm not a great actor in
Hmm.
that sense. um, and also I feel like the best opportunities come from like genuine, like casual encounters
Yeah,
that you were able to cultivate.
right.
Like the couple people that I met in film school are the ones I still work with. Like my friend Gianluigi, who's a
Mm,
director, amazing director. Like we made short films and he acted in those, and I sometimes directed them, sometimes I shot them, and we made our first opportunities together. Um, and those are the connections that are gonna always be there.
yeah.
Those are the directors that get to the next level and bring you with them. You know,
How much of that do you think is your career at this point? Working with directors that you've built with versus like new relationships with
it's
directors that are already at a certain
it's
level.
like I don't know, 75% at least.
Mm,
I think the way I'm measuring my success now is in how many directors come back for more, I think that's the real indicator.
that's a great indicator.
I think that's the real indicator because, I mean, there's definitely a ton of indicators, but like getting to work with the coolest director, it's definitely like something I'm jealous of when it
Mm,
comes to other DPs, but like it's not always something that comes from like merit alone. It comes from luck to be in the same room,
mhm,
to have shot the particular project that impressed that particular director in that particular moment.
mhm,
So there's a lot of coincidence. There's a lot of just random events in life that
yeah,
make things happen. Um, so it's tough. Like I definitely wish I had worked with a ton of directors that haven't called me yet or I haven't connected with yet.
mhm,
And if I had to measure my success just based off of that, I will feel like I'm much less than a lot of my colleagues that maybe are at my same level, technically speaking or creatively speaking.
mhm,
But when you work with a director that has worked with a ton of DPs, bigger than you, smaller than you, and they come back for you, that means you've done something right. So
yeah,
that's the way I like to think about it and to measure my success, and not just about how striking the images are. And because also, like, sometimes you get the visually exciting project, sometimes you get the boring project, but I've definitely had big directors that have worked with huge DPs, ASC
mhm.
DPs, DPs that have done real things, and they've come back for me, and that's flattering, and I
What do you
think it
think it
tells
is
you,
about yourself? It's like a very, maybe an awkward question, but
yeah, I don't know, like I don't think I'm better technically than any of these people. I
mm,
don't think that I'm particularly smart or particularly creative. I think sometimes you just have the right energy that matches the right director, and you had good experiences, and you shared some cool conversations outside of set, and you just became friendly for some reason, or maybe your demeanor enables the director to operate a certain other way. Like I've had multiple directors tell me I'm easy to work with. I'm not really sure how to interpret that. I guess it's cool.
yeah,
Or maybe I'm just like way too Like I'm the yes man, maybe. I don't know. Like I don't know. Sometimes I like think that maybe I should be less likable for directors
Mm.
because it would mean I'm trying harder and I'm pushing more.
Well, that's interesting
But
because you said you were listening to the Max Goldman episode,
mhm,
and I had the conversation with
yeah,
him. And something he said that really fascinated me was a lot of directors actually don't like it working with him because of how hard he pushes
yeah,
and like how many ideas he has. And like he says he has a select people
yeah,
that like vibe with that,
yeah,
but a lot of directors don't at all.
yeah,
So I think that's interesting as well.
yeah. I think you know, just bringing it back to being infants in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
He's done it for 30 years,
30
so
years.
I
Yeah.
that's the way to do it.
Sure.
I have nothing to add to that. I wish I was more that way. The reality is that I guess sometimes either I read the room differently or I just don't think it's worth pushing, or I don't think it's the right project to push in other directions. But I hardly fight with directors. That being said, there's a certain set of directors that I'm more confident with, that I've worked many times with, and I've definitely get to gotten to yell with those people and
Mm.
to like actually have fights with those people. And it's exciting to fight about an image because
Mm.
like we're both passionate about making it
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate goal. If I could have that level of confidence with every director, I would. I would love to like just be able to speak my mind freely every time. I think when you've done it for 30 years and you have that level of confidence, it's one thing.
Yeah.
I think as a 27-year-old with 5 years, 7 years of
You're
experience,
27.
yeah,
Mm.
I think at this point, when I'm working with a 45-year-old director who's done it for 25 years, 30 years, like, I don't know, there's a certain level of respect. There's a certain level of self doubt where, like, I'm going to make the suggestion, but I'm not going to tell you you're an idiot for, like, wanting to shoot this way and not this other way.
Mm.
And also, if we always just push for the easier thing, and like always shoot into the L of the room where the window is, and like we like set everything to be the
The
easiest possible
standard.
scenario for
Yeah.
ourselves. uh yeah, we're getting good images, but are we getting better? Are we being challenged enough?
Mhm.
Sometimes there's excitement in looking in the worst possible direction and making a good image. And there's definitely, again, going back to like those less visually exciting movies, there's a ton of movies that are shot in boring locations and that are shot with the worst possible conditions
Yeah.
for a cinematographer, and they're still exciting. I mean, Severance.
Right. Yeah.
Severance is everybody's nightmare, but making a show looking that good in white rooms with small overhead lighting
Mhm.
only, and having these crazy like sequence moves that are 3 minutes long, like
Mhm.
somebody had to be in that situation and really master that terrible situation. So again, it's all about finding excitement in everything, I think.
Have you always been this excited about filmmaking or cinematography, or has your passion grown over time?
Mm,
Or has it maybe declined? Like, what is your passion
yeah.
level now compared to maybe when you started?
I think I go through obsessions in my life, and some of them die out, and some of them get even worse.
Mm.
And with film, I think it became an obsession when I got my first camera in my hands, and I realized there's so much to it, and I didn't know how to do anything. And it gets addicting to me to like unlock different things and see different things and learn different aspects of this world. And then that's where the obsession gets even worse, and maybe it turns into passion. For me, it's not always the most positive of feelings. Unfortunately,
The
like I live
obsession?
it in a very obsessive way. I'm aware of it. It's not like a problem, but like I wish it was pure passion and joy. It's not always just that. Um, but I think the most exciting thing that happened to me as a cinematographer is when I first started to unlock certain ways to look at an image and notice things. Like I remember initially, I thought it was all about the lens and the camera. And then I started understanding lighting. And you look at things that you've looked at for your whole life, and you're like, oh wow, I was looking at this the whole time and I wasn't seeing this.
Mm,
And when you unlock those extra little levels of perception, that's the most exciting thing.
I think for me right now, that is production design and wardrobe.
Yeah.
That is something I never considered
Yeah.
or even thought of.
Yeah.
But when you look at the lighting, it's like, okay, I could do the same type of lighting, but
Yeah.
if it's in a white
Yeah.
white wall, it's not going to look the same.
Yeah.
So that to me is something that I've unlocked in my brain
Mhm.
recently.
Have you ever noticed how sometimes you're like lighting something and the art is not in place yet,
Oh
and
yeah.
you have a stand-in and the wardrobe is not there,
Yeah.
and it looks like shit?
Yes, and then you start questioning yourself.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like, what am I doing wrong?
Yep.
And then all the elements come together,
Mhm.
and it's the most beautiful image you've ever
Mhm.
done.
Yep.
You know?
And I joke sometimes because I don't know, maybe the second AC or some random stand-in will be in there.
Yeah.
We'll joke around. It's like, oh, this doesn't look good. And then
Yeah.
the actor or someone will stand right.
Yeah.
Perfect now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the opposite happens, that's really bad.
Has that happened?
When like so many times, like I have the perfect stand-in. There's always that one
Yeah.
like carpenter or like
Yeah,
grip
yeah.
that looks amazing on camera, and they're like, oh wow, this is a good shot. And then talent comes in and you have like 10 minutes with them and it doesn't look right, and you're like, oh wow. So when that happens, that's scary. But I think that's further proof that our job is like maybe 10% of it.
Mm,
You could shoot a film with natural lighting and be have control over everything else, and it will look amazing.
right.
So, and that's where like also the ability comes in to be able to scale down and say, okay, you know what, for this project I need nothing.
Mm,
I forget where I've seen this, but like there's the DPs that don't know they can ask for more and they don't ask for anything,
mm,
and they don't get good images. Then there's DPs that know they can ask for more and they ask for everything, and they're good, but they ask for everything.
mhm,
And then there's the masters who know what they can ask for, but still ask for the bare minimum because that's what they need,
mm.
you know? And that's where we should, I think,
Strive for.
strive for. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like just, hey, like I actually am confident that I need 2 lights or 1 light, and it's
Mhm.
gonna look amazing. And that's it. Like that's the level of confidence that I want to achieve, you know?
Do you find that you look at those moments or look at the budget that's given to you, and if you realize that you might only need a certain amount in lighting, do
Yeah.
you ever delegate some of that budget to another department?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
What is that department for you that you tend to kind of
Art,
are always?
always.
Yeah.
Art, or I think camera is like not exciting to me, to be
Mm,
honest. Like there's all the cameras are good. Most lenses are great. Like, especially in this era where we like bad lenses,
right.
we like broken lenses, we
Hmm.
like everything, you know, like everything has a place. Camera is like the least of priorities to me.
Mm,
As long as things are working and we have a plan, and like I feel good about the way we're gonna achieve the certain movement or the certain shot, that's everything else doesn't matter. I don't care for all the additional bells and whistles. Lighting to me is like, you know, once you have enough to set the vibe and light the scene, there's a certain amount of budget you should dedicate to your safety.
uh,
You know, because we all make mistakes.
mhm,
Lighting is the hardest thing on earth, I think.
mm.
And
Has it always been hard for you? Do you find it's harder? Do you find it's continually harder as you grow?
yeah,
You're
I mean,
finding new challenges in lighting?
totally, yeah. And I think the way I'm getting better, what I'm getting better at is like preparing for the possible problems and potential asks that I'm not ready for.
And do
Like,
you work with your gaffer on those potential, like, if this goes wrong, we might need something here?
totally.
Mm,
Yeah. I always have like a list of ground units and things. And like one of the gaffers I work most with, Tristan Moffat in LA, he likes to tell me how many minutes away each unit is. And it's like, okay, we're gonna have this. This is gonna be always 2 minutes away. This is gonna
mm,
be 5 minutes away. This is gonna be 10 minutes away. So we know, like, in case we need an extra little catch light, a little wrap, or whatever, like we know what's available to us, and we have a plan, and we have a plan B, and we have a plan C, and I enjoy those efficiencies so much. Yeah, I really like the almost like puzzle aspect of like figuring out the best schedule and the best approach and the best shot order. You know,
What is your relationship with like the first AD? Now that you brought schedule up, I think that's a really interesting relationship.
yeah. I like to be very involved.
Mm.
I'm very opinionated, but I definitely actually, yeah. While I don't fight a lot with directors, I fight with ideas a lot. Yeah. Um, I don't like being told how long things should take. I think we know, and I think if you trust your crew,
Yeah.
they're not going to lie to you. Um, I don't like being forced into a certain order for a wardrobe or for makeup if I know there's things that take longer
Mm.
or things that could be more efficient. So I am very opinionated. At the same time, when you work with the really, really, really good ADs, it's the fascination is infinite because they have to think of so many things
Mm.
and they have to know so many things, like actually know how things work. So yeah, I enjoy the being involved, and I also have a lot of respect for ADs in general. It's a terrible life.
It's a horrible job.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're always
Yeah.
kind of the bad
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Everybody hates you.
but I want to transition into kind of
Yeah.
like this one area you brought it up earlier.
Yeah.
And it has to do with kind of maybe your confidence
Yeah.
as a DP and the fact that you told me that you're colorblind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Um, yeah, this is something I haven't told a lot of people, especially because I thought it would be a problem for me, like landing jobs and like having directors trust me or like even be okay with the idea of me like not seeing things as they see. But I am colorblind, red and green specifically, although it extends to other things like blue and purple. Sometimes for me are the same thing. um, I've realized recently that I've told a couple of people that I've proven myself to. I mean, there's directors I've done 10 jobs with, and they know I can do it, even though I might have some limitations. And when I finally had the courage of saying it, like the reaction is generally of surprise and like they find it funny or they find it interesting or they find it impressive. So I think I'm okay with sharing it now more. Uh, but there's definitely an added level of insecurity and confidence in your eye when you know that you're not even seeing the actual thing.
Mm.
Um, and on one hand, I think I find the same things, the same harmonies that most people find good and interesting are still applicable to me. I think that in the discussion of nature versus nurture, I think 90% of taste is nurture. We learn it. We learn that things go well together through experience, through habit, through just the general opinion of people, and through what surrounds us. So even though I might see red and green differently from you, I know that the same things that go well together for you guys go well together for me.
Mm.
That being said, um, definitely a lot of little things that I have to figure out in addition to like what most people go through. My wife is used to like getting every pitch deck and every treatment I get, and sometimes I have to write down the colors because I get on a call with a director, and I just if they start talking about palette and like specific tones and
Mm.
colors, I need to know that that's pink and not light blue.
Mm.
And sometimes I don't know by myself. Um, and again, I can say that that particular shade is better or fits better in the image than another one, but I might not have the name for that shade, you
Right.
know? So my wife has been, and my friends have been tormented by my insecurities a lot. And they do a lot for me when it comes to like confirming this is this color and not the other. When I'm in a color session, especially remotely, I'll
Mhm.
mute myself a lot when I have to give a note and like something looks a little warm to me, but actually it's just a little too green. um, and then it's all about building a support system, both at home and on set. My gaffers all know.
Mm.
My first ACs all know. My DIT, Call Bass in LA. I've been flying him all over because he has this crazy ability of like knowing exactly the way I'm gonna see certain things. So like,
That's a great relationship.
yeah, sometimes I do see an image and I think it's warm, and in reality, it's very green. And he knows how to communicate that to me. And we've built some level of understanding and some methods where we can communicate efficiently, and like avoid mistakes. And listen, hopefully this gives me like a very peculiar and particular and special outlook on certain things,
Yeah.
and maybe it made my taste be a certain way and not another. But it's definitely hard to navigate. And I know there's a couple colorblind DPs, and I heard of a colorblind production designer. I don't know how
That's
that works.
crazy.
That one is
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, I'd love, if anybody's listening, I'd love to be connected and like
Yeah.
see what you guys do. Because like I have some tools. For example, I have this app, Colorblind Pal. It just, first of all, it emulates what I see, which
Mm.
I'll show you. It's
I would love to
crazy.
see
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Um, and the way I know it emulates it correctly is that when I put these filters, for me, the image is completely normal. And then I pass it to people and they're like, oh, we're all aliens to you. I'm like, no, I mean, I guess. And also it has some functions, like it has a filter function where I can select red and it's only going to show me the red, or I can point it to certain things and it's going to tell me what color certain things are. Of course, like for the digital world, there's no such thing as white or black or gray. So sometimes I see a gray and or like I see like a light brown and I point it at it and it gets confused. So like, um, that's not like the perfect tool
Mm.
either. But
It's
through
something.
all these
Yeah.
things, I've
Hmm.
kind of built a method where I feel confident in what I do and I can get by. But there's definitely some nightmare jobs where like I have to mix like pink and purple and blue, and those are tough. Like
Mm.
I know what I want and I
Mm.
and I see the right things versus the bad things, but giving direction is really hard because colors makes differently for me.
Mm.
You know?
Is it, how do I want to say? Is it weird that you can't, or are you just so used to seeing the way that you have that
Mm.
sometimes like you don't really know what the final image actually looks like? Does that make sense?
No, I'm not sure. Sorry.
Because you can't see certain colors.
Yeah.
So like when you get your final image, you
Yeah.
still can't see the final image
Yeah. Yeah.
compared to like what I would see.
Yeah. I mean, to an extent, do we know for sure that your green is everybody else's
Hmm.
green? Your red is everybody
Hmm.
else's red. What happens with color blindness is some colors are like filtered out because I cannot perceive them.
Okay.
So really like sometimes certain shades of red and certain shades of green mix together and I cannot like discern them and like tell them apart. Um, but I might have a hard time giving names and differentiating those shades, but I still see them. And I think there's no way for anybody at this point in time to prove that while you guys can give the same names to different colors, you still see them the same way. Does
Mm.
that make sense?
Yes.
Like you can tell light blue from red,
Right.
but is your light blue the same as another person's light blue? Is your red
Mm.
the same? You can tell them apart.
Mm. And is that in terms of taste what you're talking about?
That's why like I don't believe in like a natural reaction to like certain harmonies in color. Like how do we know that everybody perceives things the same way?
Right.
We do know that if we say that two things go well and go well together for a long enough time and enough people say it, then people are going to start looking at those shades and like, oh, cool, and that's
Mm.
cool. But look at fashion, like, you know, sometimes they say certain things cannot go together, and then 10 years after they're like the trend, you know.
Mm.
So I don't know. I think it's all constructed, and I think it's fun to keep up with it, but in terms of how much of it is instinctive and natural, I don't know. I cannot tell. Especially I cannot tell.
Do you,
Yeah.
when you opened up to some of those directors about
Yeah.
it, but you also tell your crew about it as well. Maybe this is a question not necessarily only about color blindness, but just the idea of being transparent and
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah.
Have you felt a sort of like liberating feeling, maybe being transparent with your crew of like your color blindness, but also even in scenarios where you're not super confident in what you're about to do or
Yeah.
like a new piece of technology? Like, how do you kind of translate that transparency with people? Like, I haven't done this before. Can you help me do this type of thing?
Yeah. I think that changed a lot from when I was younger and less experienced than now.
Mm.
Because now there's a certain level of respect that my crew has towards me, no matter of our past experiences or if it's the first time we've worked together. Where I feel confident saying, hey, like, I have no experience with this kind of lighting. I don't know this tool. I'm not confident in this decision. And I know they're still going to have a certain amount of respect for me. But early on, especially in LA, especially in bigger markets, you're like the new kid on the block. And if you don't look like you know your stuff, they're just going to boss you around. Like it definitely happened to me where like people didn't listen or people didn't hustle enough or like they just didn't do what I was telling them to do or asking for, you know? So now I feel like there's value in being vulnerable and like admitting what I don't know how to do and like asking for help. And, you know, we all work with people that are much better than us at different things. So the ability and the freedom of asking for things and mixing all of these experiences into a final image is really cool, I think. But early on, like if you're like just starting out in the industry, you got to be careful with some people because not everybody is like cool and down to help you and down to support you. And I think we have to realize that a lot of people do this every day and they're not
Yeah, they're on set
in
probably
it.
way more.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not in it for like creative reasons.
Mm.
Sometimes they're like just making money and calling it a day, or maybe they love the craft and like the hustle of it, but they don't like film.
Mm.
There's a lot of people that are in film and don't like watching movies
Right.
or don't care about the final image
Mm.
or don't even understand it.
Mm.
You know, I work with a lot of technicians that are like, I'm not going to give you an opinion on this image. I have no opinion. Like, I don't know what's good or bad, but I can pull focus very well.
Right.
So those people, you have to be a good employer in a sense.
Mm.
You have to be
What
a
does
good
that look like for
professional.
you?
I think it's
Have you, and
respecting.
have you evolved over, I
Uh,
guess, a couple years of being employer leader?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's almost like an invisible um, shift in attitude and just like, you know, when you can tell when somebody has done it for a long time
Hmm.
or when they're doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
I don't think I've consciously changed much in my approach, but like, I think when I walk on set right now, like, I have a demeanor that's very different from when I started out. And I look like I fit a little more. So I think that leads to people respecting me a little bit more.
Mm.
But I don't know if I could name one thing. How about you? Like, do you have like a specific thing that you were doing wrong? And
Yeah, I think I've said this a couple times, but I noticed about myself in the beginning when I first started DPing.
yeah,
I think my lack of confidence in my own ability resulted in me almost being way too specific on
hmm,
what I wanted,
yeah,
especially on the lighting side of thing, where I didn't allow for like them to have creative input.
yeah,
Like I would pick the exact fixtures, exactly where I wanted them,
yeah,
exact temperature, intensity, everything. And it was almost because I felt like I needed to prove to people
yeah,
that I knew what I was doing.
yeah,
But I think as I got more confident in my own abilities, I started to let that side of me go
yeah,
and almost encourage, and like I want ideas from like the
yeah,
gaffer,
yeah,
the key grip. And I think that has helped me become a better leader and um, allowing people to feel more creative and engaged and involved in the project rather than me just like
yeah,
telling them what exactly to do.
yeah. I think what I do is with lighting specifically. I am really detailed. I make my own floor plans. Sometimes detailed to an excessive amount where like it's completely unnecessary, but it just helps me like feel like I'm doing enough and like feel like I'm checking every box. Um, but then I never like suggesting specific or like I do, but like I'm very clear with Gaffer specifically that I'm like, okay, this is my idea, but like, what do you think? Feel free to swap out any unit for an equivalent fixture.
Mm.
Or if you have a completely different idea, just please let me know and let's try it out. And two things. First of all, I think it's important to be prescriptive because it's the best way to communicate, especially with something so, you know, intangible as
Mm.
lighting. if you don't know exactly how to describe things or exactly how to illustrate them with a technical approach or very specific references or, you know, a very clear message,
Mm.
then it can get very confusing and the communication can be broken. But on the other hand, I think it's important to try things that you have no experience with. Like sometimes a gaffer will suggest such a different lighting approach that I'm like, I have no idea how this is going to look, but let's look at it. In those scenarios, it's good to trust to an extent, but also I always have a backup plan
Sure. Yeah.
because gaffers have the perspective of the lighting. They don't necessarily have the idea of how you're
The
going to
whole
frame it,
thing.
what
Yeah.
lens you're going to use, what kind of like optical look you're going for. Shooting on very sharp lenses and doing really soft lighting gives you
Mm.
one look. But what if you're giving me excessively soft lighting and I'm shooting on really fucked up vintage lenses? Like, there's, I feel like lighting people don't always have enough context to make all of the decisions,
Mm.
especially on short form,
Mm.
especially if they're not familiar with camera and with production design and with other things. But they do have good ideas most of the times because they've done it for way longer. So
Mm.
I like listening. I like having a plan B. And I know America is not good with plan Bs. I keep hearing this thing of only having one plan and just like, I
Sticking
like
to
that,
it.
but
Yeah.
I like sleeping at night too,
Right.
you know? So
Mm.
I try to do both in a sense, which is maybe a limit because like maybe I don't go at it hard enough. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think ambitious on one hand and very conservative on the other, and I try to marry those two things.
Do you think that your ambition, how much ambition is too much ambition for you? Do you think it could be detrimental sometimes to like your human self, your soul, or just like your relationships, your life outside, if you have too
Mhm.
much ambition? Or do you feel like you can't have enough ambition?
I think when I was looking to the Max Goldman episode, he said something about longevity in this career. And I think that's a vision I really share, where, especially in America, especially as a European, we're not as crazy about our ambition. We're much more mellow, you know? Um, and like being here and seeing how much people push and how much people dare and how much people invest. As an outsider, it's scary sometimes. I don't know if I can match that energy.
Mm.
But in my short time here, I've definitely seen people push too hard and get burnt out immediately or like burn bridges. And I think there's a level of ambitiousness or ambition that um, helps you go further in your career. And there's a level that makes you go backwards,
Mm.
especially when you're not really self aware and you think you're the shit, pardon the French, and you just don't have the maturity of saying, okay, you know what? I think I know everything. In 20 years, I'll know much more and I'll think I'm an idiot.
Mm.
So let me be ambitious, but also be open to like self criticism and listening to others, especially whoever has more experience than me. That being said, there's so many success stories of people that are considered completely insane and then they just make completely new things or
Mm.
completely incredible things. So, is there an answer? I don't know.
Mm.
I think sometimes I wish I was the crazy ambitious person and I could make the best movie in the world. Some other times I'm like, you know what? I've been doing this for a certain amount of years. I want to keep learning. I want to keep growing. And if I push too hard and I lose myself and I burn this bridge and I lose this relationship, I might not get to do this for as long as I want to do it.
Right.
You know.
Have you had moments of burnout yet?
Um, I think from travel and from doing the wrong kinds of projects,
Mm.
for sure. Um, I've had to take short breaks. I'm not at a point where I think I'm gonna quit or like I want to take a long break. I'm not there. I can see it happening, and that's why when I'm home, I want to spend time with my wife and with my family, and cooking and enjoying my hobbies and
Yeah, I
like
heard you're a good cook.
I don't know, but
I might have to come over for dinner.
yeah, please, please. We'll make an episode with a
Yeah,
recipe.
exactly.
um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's important to celebrate normalcy
Mm,
and uh, and to take your time.
mm,
And I'm really not good at it,
mm,
really not. But I have to get better at it.
mm,
At it, I know it, and I think I will.
mm.
You know,
I think this is like a theme that I find consistently with people and like
yeah,
myself as well, is like how much identity do you put into being a cinematographer?
yeah,
Like I think your answer really, not yours specifically, but whoever answers that is a real. It shows how much time and emphasis they put on their
yeah,
personal life and social life rather than their or just their work life.
yeah,
And I think it's a weird maybe contradiction because in the beginning, I think even for me now, I put a lot of emphasis in like my identity and being a DP because I
yeah,
am still super ambitious and I haven't gotten to the place where I get quote unquote perceive I want to be yet.
yeah,
So I do a lot, but I also find that I have a lot of passions outside of filmmaking.
yeah.
And then I talk to people that are maybe way more experienced than me,
Mhm.
and maybe their identity is a lot less because they've gone through so many different things
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, I think it's all about figuring out how much of a person you are, how much of an individual you are. If we only do this and have nothing outside of it, like what really do we have to tell?
Right.
Like you're talking about putting yourself and your individuality in your work, but like if you are nothing, if there's no depth to your person, what are
Right.
you
What do you
really,
have to offer?
you know?
Yeah.
So people that become kind of robots in this industry and only do this and have nothing to tell are just not interesting.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of people that work a lot less but have much more to tell that get there a lot quicker and maybe with less money and less projects under their belts, but more meaningful ones.
Mm.
And they bring more meaningful things to each individual project.
Mm.
So I think it is important to cultivate your person outside of this a lot.
Mm.
And I think when it comes to like even talking to directors, like they can tell when somebody is an interesting person
Being shallow.
or just,
Yeah.
and again, like our job is hard and we're specialized in something to an extent, but there's so many DPs and there's so many
Yeah.
bad DPs that still make great images because they know how to work with their crews, that I think it's dangerous to think we're special just because we made 10 good frames, you know.
Mm.
And we have to stay interesting in every possible way. So I don't know.
Mm. What is what's your idea of longevity in this career? And I know you said you want
Mm.
to potentially do narrative or more narratives,
Yeah.
like feature. How do you anticipate getting there, especially when the commercial work is so prominent and like
Yeah.
the work is good, creative is good, the money is good. And
Hmm.
then sometimes when you transition in narrative,
Yeah.
maybe from the financial side, it's not there.
Yeah.
That could be hard sometimes for a lot of people to transition into.
Yeah. I think this to me is like a huge internal topic right now. I've always wanted to do narrative and I still want to very much. But even in my commercial life, I'm traveling a lot more than I am okay with and than I was ready for and than I have ever anticipated. So it's hard for me now in a stage of my life where I just got married and I very much enjoy being at home and maybe we're thinking of having a kid at some point. It's very hard to imagine how I could like be away way more than this and for way longer. So I don't have an answer. I really want to do narrative. I think right now it would have to be the right project at the right time and with the right people. And I'm down to do it for free and I'm down to like really kill myself for the right project, but I'm not gonna go through the B movies and the shitty scripts just to prove that I can shoot something longer. it's just silly, I think, and you get burnt out and you ruin your life. So I'm very much okay doing more commercial work and more short form. And hopefully some of the directors we work with are gonna, get a narrative opportunity. And I mean, it happened for you, right?
Mhm.
So, and if you're an interesting enough person and if you're good enough at your job, they'll bring you along. And hopefully, if those are people you invested in, they're gonna have good scripts and they're gonna make something good, and it's gonna be worth being away for 3, 4 months.
Right. It's a long
And at
time.
that point, we'll figure it out. Yeah, I
Yeah, it's a
know.
long time.
A lot of people figure it out, and I think my wife now is also in the industry, which helps. um, Helps a lot just to understand each other, to understand the level of commitment. And also sometimes we travel together, which is amazing, and I'm really lucky. But yeah, I don't know if I can ask anybody to travel with me for 3 months, or to just be okay with me not being at home for 3 months. I guess we'll figure it out when it
Mm.
happens.
I've heard stories of like families traveling to different sets and like there's
Yeah,
daycare, set daycare,
yeah.
which I heard is I
I
don't know,
mean,
that's pretty interesting.
it's super
It's
interesting.
like a circus life
Yeah,
almost.
I think it's fine. I think what we fail to ask ourselves is, first of all, um, what are we doing to our wives or to our partners? Wives or husbands, or just partners. We're essentially asking them to give up on whatever they want to do, unless they're lucky enough to be able to work remotely or to have like the perfect scenario that works for us. And also, what will we be doing to our kids? Like, I know a couple directors that fly their families out all the time. I cannot imagine at 3 years old, like being on planes every week and like, again, like, I don't know, taking away anything normal from your life for what? For
Right.
just another commercial, another one of these. When it comes to long form, maybe like there's a way you could be away for 6 months and like bring your family along and everybody has a very exciting time. I cannot see that becoming normal and consistent enough for me where I am a nomad and I don't have a home, and
Mm,
I just don't know if I'm compatible with that lifestyle as a
yeah.
person. But every once in a while, maybe a film every year or every 2 years, I'm super down to like go all in. And I know I have a strong enough relationship with my wife where we can figure it out, and hopefully she can come along, and hopefully like I can return the favor.
Yeah.
But yeah, as of now, it would have to be like really a good script and a very exciting opportunity for me to say, okay, you know what, I'll just leave everything behind. Yeah.
What you just said was really interesting, and it's something that I've thought of for a while because I think I'm sometimes so engulfed and ingrained in my own work
Hmm.
that sometimes I almost forget to like ask about her day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find that has that ever happened to
Yeah.
you? Or like, I don't know, sometimes I just all I keep thinking about is like the thing that that's coming up, the
Yeah.
commercial that's coming up, the lighting that I have to do. That I'm like, she's sitting in front of me
Yeah.
having dinner. I forgot to ask her how her day was.
Yeah. Does she call you out for it?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I think
which
that's
is
really
good.
important. Yeah. I think if my wife didn't call me out every single time, I wouldn't have this sense of awareness. um, I think it's important. I think, yeah, we tend to feel very self important in this career. But really, we have to remember we're not saving lives.
Right.
We're just
Yeah.
turning on lights in
Yeah.
spaces and telling stories, sometimes bad, sometimes good. So I don't know. My sister's a doctor.
Mm.
I'm not going to feel important when she's saving lives.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, we have to be reminded on a regular basis because we can get trapped in ourselves, I think.
At this like point in your life, in this moment, where are you finding the most fulfillment and joy?
Mm. Hmm. Um, that's a tough question.
It is. Yeah.
I think the instinctive things for me is to think about work immediately, which also tells something about us. Um, when it comes to work, every time I get on set and I know the project is gonna be good, and not that I'm gonna make a good image, but the whole project can be good. That's the most exciting thing for me. Like I almost feel like I'm high because I get this kind of adrenaline
Mm.
and hope that we're gonna make a story and it's gonna work, and every single element is gonna work towards a finished product that is good and that I can be proud of. So yeah, on set and on a job is when everything comes together. When I see everybody getting excited, that's where like
Mm.
I get reminded of why I like this, like the real team sports. Um, outside of work, I think right now I miss traveling for pleasure. And when we get to like take our time, and when I get to tell my agent, please don't email me, and when I get to not look at my phone, and when I really, really get to disconnect and forget to look back at my past work and, just obsess over my mistakes and my future and my past all the time, that's where I really find my joy, I think.
Mm.
Yeah. Just being able to disconnect. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
I guess where you are now, sitting in that chair and across from you,
Yeah.
is that version of you that just graduated film school. What advice would you give that younger version of you that is stepping out into this career now just from film school?
I actually know this answer because I just talked about it with my wife yesterday.
Amazing.
I think for one reason or another in my life, I've always tried to be smart about completing an assignment instead of just like sticking to the assignment and doing it to the best of my abilities. I would always find like the smart way of like going around it and still deliver while not really following the track. uh, I would say just like stop trying to be special and original, if that even exists all the time, and like try to be good and better. Like you don't always have to be different. You just have to improve every single time. You know,
Mm.
I was definitely trying to be a smartass every time, and I don't know. I think it slowed me down because I avoided problems instead of facing my weaknesses
Mm.
and getting better.
Amazing.
Has anybody asked you this question?
Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
People have asked me.
Yeah.
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's been a while since someone asked. I ask this all the time.
Yeah.
It's like how I end
Yeah.
every time. Um, put it back on me. What was my answer? I'm trying to think of a different answer than what I gave last time, but
Yeah.
I think it's to not be afraid.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to in the beginning stages, especially in the career.
Yeah.
My lack of confidence made me really afraid to try things. Made me really afraid to experiment or go out of my own comfort zone. And I think I would tell my younger self that the beginning stages of your career is the perfect time
Yeah.
to get out of your comfort zone, experiment, try things, because the stakes are so much lower.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to put that much pressure on yourself when you're just starting out. So have fun.
Yeah.
And don't be so fearful about making mistakes.
Yeah.
That's what I tell myself.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Next time I'm going to say that.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Where
Thanks for having
can
me.
people find your work?
Instagram. I wish I had my handle. Maybe you'll just put it up here
Yeah,
somewhere.
that's fine.
I don't remember it. And yeah, my website, federicotamburini.com. Yeah, that's it. Don't have many other socials.
Cool.
TikTok is gone. Maybe
Yeah.
not. I don't know. We'll see.
Amazing. Thank you,
Yeah.
dude.
Thank you, man.
Really
Thanks so
appreciate it.
much.
All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. Peace out.